I would like to ask all the panel members now on the stage, and we'll add Ana-Cristina Grohnert. She is Managing Partner People at Ernst & Young, and Paul-Bernhard Kallen, Chief Executive Officer of Hubert Boda Media. Herr Kallen, first question to you. I mean, is this on? Yeah.
I don't know. Is it?
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, after having heard these two impulse statements, is this the end of vertical power? I mean, are we losing power to technology? Are we losing power to the people on the street?
Frankly, I don't know how important power is if life and entrepreneurial life is about innovation. And I think we have to concentrate and focus what is necessary to drive innovation, because that is where it is all about. And frankly, I think that looking for more entrepreneurial spirit, organizing more about entrepreneurs, is key to the future structure of companies. Since we changed a fully integrated magazine company into a startup and middle-sized media company group, we grow. And I think that is not about power, that is very much about driving innovation through entrepreneurs.
But how does that, Border, how does that work in practice? I mean, you, in order to allow people to innovate, you have to kind of give up power. You have to do your intrapreneurs. You have to allow them to kind of follow their interests. I mean, how do you organize this?
I think you have to learn from entrepreneurs. Be it in-house, so you have to give them room, or external entrepreneurs by partnering with them, taking a stake in the company and help them to grow their business. I truly don't believe that innovation is coming up in big companies driven by power games. It is, from my point of view, exactly the opposite. So that is why we tried to bring a media company or a magazine company that is fully integrated into something that is light, that is built around tents, and where people take responsibility and drive innovation and drive growth of their respective businesses.
Thank you very much. So, Frau Grohnert, there's this famous, coinage, Generation Y, the younger folk. And it seems to me, if I look at my daughter, if I look at kids who are a bit older, that they actually want to work, or they no longer want to work in kind of big, integrated, hierarchical companies, that they want to be more entrepreneurial. I mean, from your perspective, Ernst & Young, is that something what you see? I mean, you hire a lot of people, I think 2,000 a year or something.
A little less, but almost. So we see the young generation entering the workforce. And of course, I think the term of power of employees was very interesting, because they start changing our way of communicating, our way of entrepreneurship, and our way of leadership. Because they come, it's not like a lot of people say they will come, they are there already. And we had this morning a lot of discussion about the new ways of working in the future, but they're pushing from down there coming in, that we change our way of power. And I think that's pretty interesting. We will publish shortly a study. We asked the students what their expectation and value set up is for the future. And it's exactly as you just said, it's like they see their goals and values in work and living together. It's not like live for working, but it's like work for living. And it's like 76%, they say their goal is be together with family and friends, and then it's only 52% saying it's career, my value for the future. So that makes us all thinking of how will we talk to them in the future. They are there already and say flexibility has to be there. So I'm pretty proud, because we have been discussing over the last 4 years in DLDwomen, the woman issue combined with flexibility. And now we have the power of new employees changing the workplace in more flexible workplace, and in less hierarchy, and more discussing about entrepreneurship and being part of it. So it's not about who is saying something, but what is said in the future. So they will change with a lot of power our corporations, and we will have to watch out that we change fast enough our workplaces.
So, but how do you explain these changes in attitude? Is that the use of technology? Is that just a change in society? I mean, it's a pretty major change, but how do you explain it?
Part of it is technology. It's social networking. So they come in and the discussion is there. They're used to discussing. And that was not that way when we went into the workplace. So we got our order and we were working on it. So they just come in and say, where's the problem? We will find the solution together. So they don't wait for someone asking them. That's a big part of it. And then probably they have watched us working a lot, working or living less and working more. It's the generation as a parents that we have worked really hard to gain this power, and probably they long for more security, for more family and combination for that.
Thank you. Frau Menne, I mean, you said kind of you have to give up power in order to have power. I mean, now you've worked abroad quite a lot. I mean, you've just recently returned to Germany. I mean, from your foreign experience, I mean, how does that experience inform what you just said? I mean, is that the type of leadership in kind of international organizations or abroad?
Well, they were quite different countries, so it was Nigeria, France, and UK. And my experience has been that the European style was still very much in place everywhere. And in Nigeria, it was definitely even more hierarchical and more like the boss is always right. So the challenge there was actually to, and it's partly still in Lufthansa today in Germany, to really bring these people into view. I think they are there. Generation Y is there already, but in a big hierarchical organization, they may not have the opportunity to show up. So you need tools and technology to give them the opportunity to go over the hierarchy maybe. And I think that was roughly the same when I saw what I saw in UK or France. So not so much of a difference in the big organizations. France even more hierarchical at that time when I was there.
I mean, there's always this difference, for example, between France and Germany. Germany is more collectively led, or has more collectively led companies, where France is still kind of more Catholic pyramid. I'm just wondering, is there a country where you would say that kind of the leadership culture or the organizational culture is most adapted to what we're talking here?
I was recently in Scandinavia to talk to our people in Scandinavia, and I think there you more have already the model of not working the whole day and participating more. But just one thing to make that clear, what I said is after a certain period of time you have to give power away. I think you still need leaders with power. And the question of power then is, how do you show your power? Don't show it via hierarchy, show it via giving a vision to people, giving emotions to people. The young people want to have an idea what they are working for. They don't want to have all the information, but they want to have an idea, what am I working for? And the power in a company then has to come from the leadership saying, this is our target, and this is the picture I paint for you, and the emotions I give you to fight for that target. And then actually you find out there is not much of work-life balance. They work 24 hours actually, but then after 3 months they may say, I reached it and then I want to have a sabbatical. Yeah, but after a certain period of time, and I'm asking myself the question, when will that be? You should be prepared as a leader to give away the power to somebody else.
Dr. Weimer, you mentioned, sorry.
Are we sure that's a generational topic? Or do we see a phenomenon of a society that is changing? That is changing because we have significantly more choice than we had in the past, everybody, not depending on age. And where institutions have a declining importance. Take institutions like churches or political parties or families and even enterprises. So is it really okay to say that is attributed to Generation Y only. I think it's a shift overall.
I wouldn't insist on Generation Y, but I mean, it's kind of a short for this whole kind of technology younger crowd.
But I totally agree to you, and we had this discussion recently in our company, and people were telling me, well, new generation was always challenging, but what we see now is a different way of working over the generations. And what you've seen in Stuttgart, there were a lot of older people just working or fighting differently than we were expecting. So I totally agree. It's not only a generation, but it's a general change of attitude. I would agree.
From my perspective, I think it is always a question from which corner you're looking on different issues. I worked for McKinsey, for Bain, and for Goldman Sachs, and I was a partner there. And I felt after, 15, 20 years of working in high-performing organizations, right, it was quite easy to work there and to be a leader in such an organization, because at the end of the day, it was grow or go, up or out, or this kind of stuff. And in 2007, I made a decision to join a boring bank, UniCredit. In 2008, they asked me whether I'm prepared to take on the CEO role for high-profile bank, a pretty boring bank with low performance and pretty mid-level people. Let's be frank and open here. And at the end of the day, what I did, I started to do town hall meetings. I started to go, in each and every town, assembled some 800 people together and talked about what I think what leadership means. I talked about where do we want to go, and yes, I started to talk about pride. I said, guys, you need to be proud of what you're doing. You need to form teams. You need to work together. You need to, and I formed a word which is working family. We are a working family. And this expression of a working family, it was spread around the whole organization. At the beginning, people were quite skeptical. What is this guy talking about? Working family, town hall meeting, country chairman's leadership club, where I pulled together the 35 most promising next generation leaders. I pulled them together. I worked with them 2 years with the top 35 people, next generation leaders. I worked every quarter, at least a full day with them. I know each and every of them. And I formed the first cohort. And after the first 2 years, I formed the next cohort. And meanwhile, I've got 70 people, the 70 top next generation future leaders. I talk with them firsthand, on a first name basis. Anna is here. She's one of them. They know me, I know them, I know their story. I think at the end of the day, what is leadership about? It is about making other people to follow you. And it might be in some organizations you need to execute power because you are in a position to execute power. And I can be not only a nice guy, I can only sometimes be quite a tough cookie, right? And if I say, I need to do it that way, then please follow me. But the good thing is, meanwhile, if I say, please follow me in a dark corner, I'm convinced that 50% plus do follow me in the dark corner. And I don't know how I managed it, but somehow it worked. And I think at the end of the day, I never used my position with the terms of power. But I agree with you. Probably I have more power than I should have.
Frau Grohnert, do you want to add something?
Yeah, that's probably what we all just described as inclusive leader. Because you were listening a while and then making decisions, or people thought that their ideas were heard. And I think this process has to be part of the culture of every company. And what we're talking about is like that the workplace is not in all companies look like that yet. And even you have a boring bank, you made them follow you for a purpose because we were following you for whatever decision you made. But the first thing is being an inclusive leader. So listen to the perspectives that are in the bank. And I think this is, and it's not only generation, it is a leadership style we all would have liked to have over the last tons of years, but we have not seen it in all corporations, and that's why some decisions were made, some directions were gone, that were pretty made in conformity, so very hierarchic. So this is the best practice, but it's not in all companies like that yet. And that's what we were saying is the power, the additional power is coming from the young generation. It came, and we were just saying, we were discussing it over the last 4 years from the female perspective discussion of listening, less hierarchy, more flexibility, more working in teams together, and now coming from the new generation. So we hope that we will see that culture in all companies, and that's why we're here and discuss it.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about leadership teams and diversity. For Menne, I mean, again, you've been abroad, I mean, and you have experience with diversity. I mean, if you compare your experiences in France, let's say, or in Lagos, with what you experience here now, I mean, how would you? What's the main difference? And are we in terms of diversity? Are we where we are in Germany? We should be. Sorry. Well,
Lagos was quite different. It was my first job abroad. I had 13 people, and the challenges were quite different. Lagos is a society where women are quite powerful. It is underestimated. So it was not at all questioned if a woman can lead the financial West African part of Lufthansa. What I see now today is definitely diversification in meetings, in boards, and that went through my whole career, is a very valid thing. And that is not only gender, but it's also international. You need several aspects to really make the right decision. And you get several aspects when you talk to, or when you involve different people. So you should have a diversity with young, old, female, male, and international aspects. And that is obviously still missing in most of the German DAX companies, I have to admit, and that is something I would assume has to change to be competitive globally.
Herr Kallen, Herr Dr. Weimer, I mean, do you agree with that? I mean, do you think we still have to kind of move much faster, much further in terms of diversity, or perhaps ask it a little bit differently? I mean, we all know diversity is important, but how important is diversity for you?
I strongly believe in the power of teams where you have additional skill sets which come together. And given my own past together with Paul-Bernhard and others, I always experienced, right, if you're working together with soldiers, if everybody has the same kind of thinking, that is not the new model which is good enough for the challenges which are ahead of us. And therefore, what I consciously do, I try to mix up people, to bring people together with different skill sets. And I, for myself, it's pretty clear. I do quite regularly breakfast with juniors. When I talk about media, about the new technology, I do not listen to anybody who is older than 30 years, period. Yeah, and on the women's topic, what I have done when I came in office, I had an idea together with a very smart lady, and we founded the first women's council. We didn't make a big fuss out of it. We created a women's council. We have 28 women's council members, and I must say the discussion with the women's council is much more effective and, by the way, challenging than the discussion with the supervisory board, by the way, right? And they can define initiatives. They are discussing with us, and I'm very glad that a couple of the Women's Council members are here today, and they know what I'm talking about. I think you need to form, for different subjects, different sparring partner groups. And it's pretty clear for Generation Y, you need to talk with Generation Y. Why should I talk with my management board members? I think a chief information officer who tells me, who is 60 years old, who wants to tell me about new media and what's the next generation with mobile, I think he's just an old fart.
Yeah, Theo, I have never had a chance to work for a boring, ordinary bank, and I'm coming close to the point of regretting it now. I have always been in a position to work for a thrilling media company, and so every now and then we should exchange seats or so.
Including compensation, I do it.
So our organization, or the border organization, has been a female or a very colorful organization since ever. The mother of Hubert Border was a very strong entrepreneur, and our editors-in-chief have very strong personalities. People who are driving the business are strong personalities. So I think for us, diversity is nothing new. It is alive and kicking since 50 years or so. Can we progress on diversity? Can we progress on capabilities? Always. But we do not feel that this is a scarcity right now. So maybe if we would merge, maybe we go for the average, maybe we would have the right level of diversity too.
I'm sure, looking forward to it.
But both of you are missing a female in the board, right?
Not missing. Not having.
But things can change. So quickly, one last round, because we unfortunately have already run out of time. I'm wondering if you look at not your company, but the German businesses in general, and look at what we just talked about, Generation Y, quote unquote, diversity, kind of the changing nature of power. Are German companies moving fast enough? And in brackets, I mean, I live in London, I've lived in California, I've lived in Paris. My question would be rather not, but you're the experts.
I definitely think no. We are moving quite slow, and I heard for 23 years being in Lufthansa that all the male managers incentivized females, but we missed females for the second two hierarchy levels for a long time. I think a quota is a very difficult thing because we just couldn't do that in our company, but the quota discussion accelerated the issue, and we still have to become faster.
From my point of view, I've got two basic beliefs. One, I've been trained some 20 years ago, which basically says pioneers are getting killed by the Indians. Yeah, so there is a certain reasoning sometimes for not being the fastest mover. Secondly, and I'm working now in Germany for 30 years or so, 25 years. Meanwhile, I have understood we will never be at the forefront of innovation in Germany. But on the other side, what we have managed somehow, we have avoided to do some of the first mover mistakes, right? And if you take our industrial basis, yeah, it's still very strong. And therefore, I think at the end of the day, I'm quite optimistic. We are not super fast sometimes, but we are a little bit like the Germans. It takes a little bit longer until we've made a decision. But when we've made a decision, then we are a little bit like a tank. And I always thought this is a little bit old-fashioned, but unfortunately it's true.
I have to admit right now that I'm so glad that Ursula von der Leyen is not here anymore, because she gave a speech this morning how patient she has been with the companies over the last 10 years. And slow is something, but very slow is, and this is the statement. I mean, we have to hurry up and we have to push for change. I think we are discussing this since 4 years, and both of you, I'm glad that Simona asked you that question, because I'm in this professional service firm. So, but still, both of you answered the same thing over the last 4 years, like you're sitting here. So we have to push everyone to move a little faster on the diversity issue, I think.
I don't want to get misunderstood. On the gender diversity topic, we have fallen behind massively. That's nonsense. But I talked about a more general perspective. Yeah, it's not always be a privilege of being the fastest. That's what I said. In the terms of gender diversity, the women's topic, in the terms of technology, we need to speed up massively.
Kallen, you have the last word.
The question was whether we change quickly enough or don't. I would like to take the opposite position. I think Germany is Mittelstand. And what I'm hearing here is always a perspective of huge DAX companies. Whether they will have a right to exist in future is, for me, with a big question mark. So the future of the big firm is, from my point of view, a topic on its own. When I'm looking at Mittelstand, I think Germany is still #1 in the world. Are we changing in Mittelstand quickly enough to adapt to most things? I would say clearly yes. And I do not see any economy changing quicker and better than we do. So my feeling, being in the middle of German Mittelstand, is just the opposite feeling from what I'm getting here. When we decided to go to India, for instance, I tried to see a couple of entrepreneurs on Schwäbische Alb, which is the surrounding of Stuttgart. And you could find companies that were employing 30, 40, 50 people out there, 300 in India and 400 in China. So they move first class and with high speed. So we shouldn't think that Germany is big DAX companies. We should always understand that German economy is Mittelstand. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thanks to the panel. That was highly interesting. I think we could continue, and perhaps we should at some point. But time is out, and yeah, thanks again. Thanks to the audience.